All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I'm your host, Damon Pistolka. And first of all, I am going to start off with an apology. I was talking with Kelly Robinson here behind in the green room, and we did not realize what time it was. We will continue some of those conversations because they're relevant to what's happening this weekend. But first of all, I want to welcome Kelly Robinson from PKR. Talking today about current trends in recruiting and hiring. Kelly, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Damon. Damon, you're one of my first LinkedIn friends from years ago.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I remember. Yeah, remember. It was back when we didn't know what video was.
No, it was this was all new, and we would
It was new.
Ira had live, and we would get on it and be silly, and we were testing it all out, and it was it was fun.
Oh yeah, it was like the Wild West. It's like the Wild West in some regards.
I'm so nervous too on these videos. It's just it's like the way of the world, right?
Yes. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. You've done a fair amount of, so let's just back up. Let's do a little background on you. You are a 20+ year recruiting veteran. You are a talent acquisition operations strategist. I'm going to have you explain that to me. And then let's talk a bit about, because you've done a lot of talks and a lot of presentations and things around recruiting, but let's start off and talk about, what is a talent acquisition operations strategist?
That's just the marketing. It's top secret, but it's also just a nice marketing little tool. No, so what I do best is, I'm a recruiter at heart, but I'm really good at looking at the process and the strategy, right? There's two things. You need to understand the strategy, but there's a framework for any kind of recruiting process. Mm-hmm. So that is what I do. That's me personally. That's my thing. Yeah.
So now you founded PKR a while ago, and how your team has grown quite a bit. How many people do you have on your team now?
Yeah, we have 22 now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So first of all, explain kind of what. That's pretty wild. I don't know if you heard that, but we have thunder in Seattle today.
No.
That's wild.
But anyway.
I didn't hear it. Yeah. You just never know. So so as you guys at PKR, you guys are helping people with recruiting and hiring people, but it's not the traditional relationship. Let's just talk about that a little bit.
No, so it's quite the opposite of what you think of. When you hear the word recruiter, it's a dirty word, right? Because people are like, mm-hmm. Oh, those are the people that are trying to just take money and find me a body and things like that. We actually do the opposite. There's no commission. There's no incenting behavior to push someone in a seat. So we work on behalf of our client partners. So it's a strict relationship with, that one partner. We're doing a search for them or many searches for them on their behalf. And so everything that we're doing, all the strategies, process, any tools like that, anything that we're bringing to the table, that's theirs. We're building it for them. It's like a professional services firm. Whereas traditional recruiters, headhunters, they work on commission or, retained searches or something like that, executive searches. They really are focused on candidates because that's what makes them money. Mm-hmm. So recruiters really, I know people say they're salespeople, and maybe they are, but they really don't close a deal. In our business, we have to close a deal. I have to get a contract that says you're going to pay me this monthly, this flat monthly fee, and we're working for you, not based on how many hires you get, based on the objective of the partnership, which is, of course, to get to hires. Mm-hmm. So very different. We can be white label, or a private label. Sometimes with companies, they want us to have their email addresses and act as them to help with their branding and marketing and things like that from an employer perspective, but it really is a partnership with the client. We work for the client, and so we have to make really good matches because we're doing either all or part of their hiring.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone falls off, that's not good, right? So
Yeah.
we really have to make sure that we're thinking about retention all the time.
Yes. Because that's the I think with straight recruiting, either retained with incentive at the end or completely incentivized recruiting, the retention is what people always worry about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly it, because I did that recruiting for 6 years where it was all commission, and it was hard for me to do that. I ended up working a lot more hours, but I was young and I made a lot of money too. But it was really important for me to make really good fits. So I probably, had to work harder
Mm-hmm.
than everyone else because, but it's a numbers game for them, right? They're going to push in some things and then they're going to see who's paying the highest fee, because clients love to negotiate their fees on their contracts and say, oh, you want 30%. Okay, well, I'll pay you 20. And then the recruiter says 25. No, you're going to pay, whatever the client says, they're going to win, but they might not get as much attention as other clients. And that recruiter is working on candidates' behalf, really. So they're working on in a database of all of these, similar skill sets, because that's what they do, right? So they build that up and then they sell it, so to speak, to the highest bidder, and they increase, comp and all kinds of things. So it's a really different world to do that. It's not bad, it's not wrong, whatever. You could do really well, but it doesn't make for good matches long term necessarily, because that's really not the intention there.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great viewpoint on that, to be able to explain it, because it is recruiters do work a very long time to build up a book of candidates that they can match with corporations.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So I had I was doing some prospecting and someone responded the other day, I need a blah, blah, blah. Do you have one? And that's typically what people think, right?
Yeah.
But no, I don't have one. That's not what we do, right? I don't have that specific skill set. I would go find that for you. My team would go find that for you. That's what we do. And then they keep the pipeline. They keep everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, not only changing and starting PKR and doing recruiting with companies, I say with, because I think it's not for, it's with companies, the way you're doing it now. Explain some of the changes you've seen over the last couple of years in recruiting, that just recruiting, not the hiring yet, because just the recruiting candidates and finding candidates and things like that have changed significantly in the last couple of years.
Oh, it's a whole new world. So candidates have a whole different, or prospective candidates or prospective employees, they have a whole different outlook. So it's different, and even just the way that we interact with them, the types of questions that we have to ask. We really have to dig in, because they do have more options just because of how the world has changed. And it's not just options, meaning, positions. It means, they want to work at home now, and they want to work this, and they want to do this, and they don't want to travel, and they want to work. They can work in Seattle. They live in Philadelphia, but they're going to work in Seattle. So there's so many different opportunities and options within them that it makes it more difficult. The recruiter really has to drill down and understand what's important to them, to that candidate, because they might say, oh, I'll work at a company in Philadelphia and I live in Arizona, but have they ever done that? Do they know what that's like? Do they really know what they're going to get themselves into? Do they know when there's like a holiday party or something, maybe they're not included, or do they know that they can be without people that long? So there's a lot of unknowns, but then there's there's just a lot of different nuances now that we recruiters need to know about.
Yeah. Do you think that the prospective candidates have gotten more selective in the jobs that they take?
Mm-hmm. For sure, because there's all these different things now. They're like, oh, well, I'd rather stay at home. I'd rather do this, or I think I could get more money somewhere else. But they also, the ones that are really good, they're in demand and they know it. We've had so for example, even through like the interview process, when we're doing tech recruiting, technical teams often interview. Part of the interview is giving some type of assessment. Right. That's very common in tech recruiting. And we went through probably a good year with one of our clients where it was such a difficult thing to get anyone to take the assessment because they didn't need to anymore. So companies were just hiring them. They're just bypassing their assessments because they're so in demand. They were so kind of desperate to hire. That's rough, right? That's rough. But you don't want to take those shortcuts, but you're in this position. So you have the candidates now that have become kind of in control, right? The job seekers have become in control a bit, depending on the, roles. But now things are flipping, right? With all the layoffs and things like that. And there's a whole new wave coming that we'll have to see what happens, but
a new wave of layoffs.
Just with the layoffs, probably a lot more too. We have a lot of our clients that are putting things on pause because they're not sure, because everyone's worried about all the talk with economy and things like that, and so people are doing that. But with all those layoffs, we haven't seen the effects of all of that, right? Because there are more to come for sure. People were hired and overpaid. We're going to see the effects of that, where people they're not valued at the comp that they're being paid anymore. Their skill set is not valued at the comp. So,
I see what you mean. So you hired Damon in, but you hired Damon in as a 20% premium because at the time the competition was great.
That's right.
Now we don't need people at a 20% premium anymore.
That's right. Crazy, right? So, tech, they overhired, but they had to, because look at what the world was doing. Everything was online.
Yeah. And I think anyway, in the tech world, it was just, they were reacting to demand, and demand went up like crazy and demand went down like crazy, and they reacted.
I don't think they did anything wrong, right? They did what they needed to do for their business. It's just, on the other side now, here's what's happened. So I think we have yet to see a lot more of the effects of some of those things, which is interesting because I can remember talking to you like in the very beginning, right? When this all started happening. And here we are, it's like 3 years later, 3 years.
It's a few years. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
And the world is so different.
Yeah.
So different. And now we have kids coming out of school that everyone thinks they're an entrepreneur. It's funny. They go to these entrepreneurial programs and no, it doesn't work like that. Go get some real life experience. But the other thing is, I digress. But the other thing is they want to work at home because they were in college at home, right? And they want to do this and they feel like they can do this. And it's really important for them to be in a business work, in industry. Like they have to be out there.
Yeah.
Be
That's
people.
an interesting piece, because I've seen that. Well, my son graduated a year ago in December, and he worked the first, I don't know, 6, 8 months without ever going to the office. And now they've started to go back a little bit, and they're going to be back a few days a week. And I think some of that office time is helpful to develop those relationships. And so many companies hired remote workers across the US or across the world that, how do they really integrate those people into the culture like you would if they were there? At least a little bit,
Mhm. Yeah. And
It's-
the larger companies have more issues with
yeah.
that. It's harder. We're a small company, so I talk to everyone almost every day, right? Like, and we talk on videos. Like,
Yeah.
we either call each other on Zoom or Slack. Like, there's no phone anymore. So, they see the best of me in the mornings. And sometimes in the day, but
Yeah.
we do a lot of that because it helps. But I do think the newer workforce, it's really hard if they can't get in and meet people, and like you said, just to build relationships. But it's all about, how do you communicate, and what about different departments, and what about on your team, and what do the other departments do, and how do they affect your job, and how do you affect their job, and what's the, you know there's so much to see and learn
Hmm.
in person that you can't always get. I mean, maybe you can, but I think you miss a big piece of it.
You miss some of it, definitely. Well, I've been sitting here and we've been talking, and there's been a lot of comments coming up. I'd say Curtis, first of all, stopped in. It was a while ago now.
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah.
Curtis.
Yeah.
And we had Michelle from Texas. Hey,
Yeah.
Michelle, how are you doing
How you
today? We had
doing, Curtis?
Ira from SoCal, where it's
Yeah.
always nice.
I'm talking to Ira tomorrow.
Yep. Yep. We'll talk about that in a moment. We got Marty here from Florida. Awesome.
Good morning.
And Mary Jane Wilson, hey, from California as well. We're getting in and getting some nice weather going on here. So, yeah, it is an interesting. I personally think hybrid work is one of the best options if you can do it, especially if you're living in a city environment with people that are commuting long distances. Because I know here in Seattle, a lot of people were commuting 1 hour and a half, sometimes even 2 hours one way to an office and back. And if you think about that 2 or 3 or 4 hours a day commuting just grinds on people so much. And you got to have better, happier, more engaged people if they've got that time. And there's one good thing about COVID. It gave people that time. And I think now there's a happy medium between the two.
I think you're right. And I also think what's changed is even the folks, those of us that were working at home before, it was harder to disconnect from work.
Mm-hmm.
This is maybe my own personal experience, but I find it easier now, because I've trained myself. Just because when you're home 24/7, it's like I've trained myself. I have an office, so I get up and I go, right. And I might have to get on my laptop and do things later, whatever. I'm a business owner, but I don't expect my team to do that, and I've enforced that with them too. So it is a whole different. But I do think they're happier. They're saving time, money, right? It's a big difference. It's a big difference, and they have, people do have more options now.
Yeah. 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 It's an interesting time for sure. And I know that some of these companies who have, forced everyone to come back to the office are finding that there's a certain majority of them that aren't coming back because you got used to it. Or I've even heard of some companies where they hired someone that's fully remote, but now they're saying, no, I'm sorry, you're coming back to the office. And I think that, to me, I think that the second part of that, if you were hired and you were in the office before and you're coming back, I mean, that's a choice. Don't come back if you don't want to, but you were already there once. But if you got hired remote and now you're saying you got to come to work, that's kind of on the company, I think, in my perspective, in my viewpoint. You should expect to lose a lot of people doing that, I think.
Yeah, and maybe they do.
That is a good point, because maybe it's,
yeah.
I never thought of it.
Mhm.
It might be what they're hoping for.
Yeah. It's the opposite. Like, it's not like the quiet quitting, but it's like kind of it's the quiet firing. It's like, well,
Yeah.
I really need you to come back in the office now. Oh, you can't? Okay, sorry, we'll have to wait.
That is, I never thought of it that way, but that's a way to do it without saying you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Well, so there's a lot of differences, because I look at, the talent shortage had to really drive change in how you recruit people. So what were some of the things that you saw that you had to do to actually find people that you never had to do before?
If we never had to do before.
Or didn't think about a lot?
Yeah. So one of the things that I think was on the kind of the opposite side that was helpful was we had more time as a team. Before this, we used to say, like, we'll go into, on site, help you with interviews and things like that. So that was actually helpful. My business, I've been doing this in around this business for like 17 or 18 years, this type of business. It's always an on-site thing.
Yeah.
Clients want their recruiters on site, right? So me starting the business a year before COVID hit, or 6 months, whatever, it was one of those questions that I always came up against. Will you go? And I really didn't want to do that. So that was actually super helpful for us to say to them, we can now with COVID and blah, 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 we can actually recruit anywhere. So it doesn't matter. So it helped them to understand our point. So that was actually really helpful. I know you're asking more about like challenges, but I think it's just making sure that we understand people, really what they want, making a really good match, because now we're open up to not just the best person in a 20-mile radius. We're looking for the best person. And, can they really work remote? Are they set up at home? Do they have a quiet space? Are the kids at home? Like some of these things you can't ask. So there's a lot of those types of challenges. People think they can work at home sometimes and they can't. It's like, have you ever worked at home? I love it. I can do laundry, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, me too. But I don't think I would say that in an interview, right? Like,
yes.
It's not about doing laundry. So there's also those challenges where I think everyone thinks they can work at home, but you really have to dig in and find out if they can. And I think the other challenge is something I've already mentioned, is like some of these companies are cutting corners in hiring because they were overpaying, because it was just hard to hire. It was even harder for us to just get people in it, depending on comp. And then we have a lot of healthcare clients too. That's been a struggle. That's been a real challenge. A real challenge. We have clients paying $40,000 sign-on bonuses.
Wow.
Healthcare.
Yeah.
Community hospital, nonprofit.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. We had a client a couple of years ago that sold right in the middle of COVID, and it was super hot, and they were a staffing company for healthcare. And the amount that traveling nurses were getting paid is great for the traveling nurses, but I couldn't believe the amounts.
Yeah.
And as many as they could hire.
Yeah.
Not just how, it's not like, 5, it's like, how many can you hire?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was pretty crazy.
And they'll take them all. We'll take them all.
Take them all. Yeah. Take them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So it comes back again though. When you said this a couple of times, find the best match. Talked about people that can work at home, because your radius of where you can get people has expanded a bit. Have you found that do you have to do testing, or do you do something different to go, okay, Damon, you're going to be able to work at home or not? Is there really, I mean, how do you really judge that?
It's really hard. So if they have been working at home,
Mm-hmm.
you can ask them a lot of questions about that.
Okay.
How do you communicate? What do you do if you're lost? Does your team have like a lot of structure? What has that been like? Do you,
Okay.
how do you, if you have an issue, how do you get in touch with someone? Do you call them, text them? What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
What's your what kind of what's routine? Like what kind of routine do you have? Because we all have gotten into our routine now, right? We all have a very specific routine that we do. So what is your routine? You want to hear them talk through, how do you stay organized? How do you tell me about the distractions? Like tell me about what kind of distractions have come up for you at work and how do you handle those? And that's normal and it's more acceptable now, which is fine, but you still want to understand how they minimize those types of things. So you can talk about what's your biggest challenge. You can, ask them, what do you like the most about working at home? What do you like the least? If you could change one thing, what would you change?
Great question. Great questions.
3 things. What are your top 3 things that you would change? Because that will tell you that's a way to say kind of what's your weakness without saying it, right? In a nicer way.
Yeah.
What would you do if you were in the office? How did your day differ? What's the difference do you feel?
Those are great questions because there's so much to uncover just from a personality, not psychological, personality standpoint. Some people are going to do better at it than others. And it's uncovering those people that really are good at it or will thrive at it is definitely challenging, I'm sure.
We've had people tell us they need to get into an office.
Yeah.
They're distracted. It's not a lot of people that will be honest like that. But they'll say, I can't, I have to be in an office. Which is good. Really, we don't have a lot of those, but we've heard that. It's like, and it's refreshing kind of, they're being really honest about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talked a lot about recruiting. Now, when it comes to hiring, have candidates expected a different way that people hire, a different pace of hiring? Have they different process in the way that people hire? I mean, because it used to be it takes a while. You might not get called back for a few weeks, or then you may not get any response. What's really changed in the hiring process?
So a lot of people are moving things more quickly than they should. So they're instead of people listen, hiring organizations, they can tighten the hiring time frame and still follow the process. The issue is when they go off track, right? It's like they go off track because they're like, we got to skip this, and this, and then they're making bad hires. So because you have candidates saying like, oh, well, I know this job pays, 130, but I'm interviewing for this job that pays 150 tomorrow, and I'm getting an offer by Friday. And so that other job feels like stress to get them in there and move through, and then they cut corners. And that's happening a lot, especially tech.
Yeah. And that, first of all, the other offer isn't imminent, may not come at all. And and I'm sure a lot of people took the bait and actually did, we can give you an offer tomorrow for more than what we said we were going to too, just to try to keep you away from the other one. Do you think that this candidate led or the candidate because the job market was focused on, or candidates had the advantage in the job market for a long time, do you think that it actually drove some good hiring changes, good recruiting changes? And if so, what are some of them that you saw?
Yeah, I mean, I do think in general, people were able to be a little bit more flexible and more open to different options where um,
Mm.
they weren't before necessarily, but also just like so from a hiring manager's perspective, you always get the hiring managers that's like, I need to see 5 people. And we all know they don't need to see 5 people. If they see one and they feel like it's a really good fit, you don't want to lose that person. Well, the old way was like, well, we're going to hold on to that person. We really like them. They're really great, but let's keep moving. I need to get my 5 or my 4 or my 3. And that's a major mistake, right? Because you've
Mhm.
also created a bad experience for that candidate who had a great, now they're not feeling like they had such a great rapport because they're going to have other interviews. And the recruiter should be honest with them, right? You've got to be transparent and provide feedback and keep them warm and keep them ongoing. So that part, some of the hiring managers have gotten that. So when I say like shorten the process, that's one of the things that, not all, but some, that's something you can shorten as long as you're still evaluating them against the job.
Mhm.
If you have 2 people that you met and you really like them and they both evaluate kind of against the job really well, then you evaluate them against each other, right? But
Yeah.
otherwise, you don't just look for 3 people and go, oh, let's see who I like, because you have to make sure first they match the job. So if they match the job, there's no reason to not move on unless there's something with their fit, right? But they wouldn't match the job if they didn't have the right fit, because it's really,
Yeah.
it has to be the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah, so that's actually nice, I think, because we got into. I mean, there's some bad habits, right? You hear the stories about people interviewing and never hearing anything back, or you
Yes.
hear, or um, like you said, waiting 2 months and then getting, oh, we'd like to have you come back in again. Well, it's how do you keep anybody excited or
No,
enthusiastic about a position by doing that, or the
no,
company?
yeah, you lost
So
them.
yeah. So, what are you excited about coming up for PKR, for hiring and recruiting? What's exciting you these days with it?
Well, so something that I'm seeing is that companies are, RPO has been around for a long time, right? Recruiting process outsourcing.
Hmm.
And that's what we do as a form of that. It's been around for a long time, but it was, the best kept secret for a very long time too. I would say probably until maybe 10 years ago is when it really started. People started hearing, and it still was quiet. But I do hear a lot of interest in that now because of the unknown. So there's an unknown, and what we do is come in and come out, scale up, scale down. Um, and so that is exciting to a company
Hmm.
where they're like, okay, it's predictable. CFOs love that, right? It's predictable cost. Your cost of hire goes way down. Your expenses go down. Your insurance, workman's comp, all of these things, payroll, all of this, goes down when you outsource. And we bring everything in and then everything out. And we can,
Hmm.
if it's a lot of work, we can bring in maybe 2 teams or 2 squads and then come down to 1 or even half time. So it's the flexibility, and that matches the unknown that's happening in the market where they need to hire people, but they don't want to pay the high contingency fees because what they've seen over time is, because everyone's tracking that now, is they don't last, right? So they spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what I'm excited about, is because I see such a big opportunity in people wanting to outsource now. I'm still doing a lot of education when I'm
Hmm.
prospecting and having sales calls, um, but they get it. It makes sense because people have been measuring all of this, the turnover and the retention, and we talk about candidate experience, and we talk about employer branding now, and all of these things that are coming to the forefront that, they're late to the game, but people are starting to climb onto that. That's exciting because that's what we do. Like that's where we fit, right? We fit.
Yeah. And you mentioned being able to right size with the hiring needs, I think is really cool, up and down. And then the other thing that you discussed briefly that I think is really important, when you outsource with experts in doing that. And so many times, like marketing or several other things in business, it's just kind of, Damon's going to do it because he's doing these other things. He's going to do the hiring too. And it just can't be that way anymore because of the specialized skills, specialized tools, and the type of approach it takes.
But not only because of that, really a hiring manager has a job. Like, so, them trying to recruit too, it's like taking on another job.
Yes.
So yes, they don't have the skill set, but they don't have the time. Their job is going to suffer, right? And so someone at the top should think these people should not be spending their time in recruiting. It's just not, it's not a good use of time or money. They should be doing what they do best, whatever they're hired for, whatever their job is, that's what they do best. So they should leave that to the experts. And that's, the outsource. Yes, like there's tools and things like that, and all kinds of things that recruiters need to, they need to learn that a hiring manager is not going to spend time on. But most of the things that the internal recruiting teams or hiring teams do is they post, and they're just praying, right? Post and pray, right? They're just hoping people are coming in. And so they're getting the best of whatever's come in, which is not always the best, depending on the company. If you have a big name, you're going to get a lot of applicants, and they're not going to match. So you have to be really kind of diligent in making sure you have the right people that can streamline that process and create efficiency and make it as effective as possible. So, it's a lot. That's what the internal teams is what they're doing. Yeah.
It's awesome though. What's that? Excuse me.
We're hunting and sourcing.
Yeah.
We don't do a lot of, we will put posts out there because that's what you do. But because it's a no-brainer, right? If someone really good, that's great. Someone really good sees it. And
it's an added bonus.
It's marketing, right? Employer branding, things like that. Yeah. It's great. It's great for our image and our clients, but no, we go out and hunt and source. That's what we do.
Hunt and source. I like that. Because I mean, if you want to find the best place, I think that's the way to hire people. I mean, if you want to go, if you say, where would they work? Where would the best person work? And why don't I go talk to them and see if they want to come here?
Yeah. You go find them. Yeah, we have done this so many times, right? So we can pull this out of our clients, and we can create that kind of profile. It's kind of like sales, but it's not. But it's kind of like sales, where you've got to figure out what the profile is, and then create, that what is the target market for that person? Where are they living? Where did they spend their time online? Not everyone. LinkedIn is a huge tool for us, but it is not the only one. There are positions that we're not going to find people on LinkedIn. Nurses, like they're not on LinkedIn, right? We hunt that, we dig them up. We do a lot of that.
Yeah. Oh, awesome stuff, Kelly. Well, if people want to talk to PKR, talk to you about recruiting and retained recruiting for their company, where's the best place to get a hold of you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. That's my baby, right? And that's something I'm there daily, constantly. Okay. And they can also go to our website, but they have to forgive it because we're getting ready to launch our new one. But it's pkrecruiting.com.
All right. Very good. Well, Kelly, thanks so much for being here today. Really appreciate it. I want to say thanks to everyone that was listening, that commented. We got Curtis and Michelle, Ira, Marty, Mary Jane, And we had Ira in there again, and Michelle. Just thanks so much for the comments and stopping by and listening to us today. Marcia, yes, thanks so much for being here today. We'll be back again later this week. Thanks again, Kelly.
Thanks, Damon.
Hang out for a moment and we'll talk.